The shuttle's engines hummed their final notes as Jake Sullivan pressed his face against the small porthole. Watching the massive interstellar academy spin slowly against the backdrop of distant nebulae, his stomach churned with a mixture of excitement and nerves. 3 years of advanced engineering studies awaited him at humanity's most prestigious space-based university. But first, he had to survive sharing a room with someone from an entirely different world. The academy's corridors buzzed with activity as students from dozens of species moved between classes. Jake had studied the basic profiles of major alien civilizations, but seeing them in person was overwhelming. Towering insectoid beings clicked past alongside graceful aquatic humanoids in environmental suits. Their presence both fascinating and intimidating. Dormitory 7 sat in the academy's residential sector, a curved building that followed the station's rotation. Jake found his assigned room and pressed his palm to the scanner. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a spacious chamber with 2 beds, study alcoves, and a large viewport showing the swirling colors of the Andromeda Nebula. What caught his attention wasn't the room's design, but the figure standing near the far wall. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her frame lean yet unmistakably feminine. Her skin held an otherworldly luminescence, shifting between pale silver and soft lavender, depending on the angle of light. Long, flowing hair the color of starlight cascaded down her back, and when she turned to face him, Jake felt his breath catch in his throat. Her eyes were the most striking feature, large almond-shaped orbs that seemed to hold entire galaxies within them, shifting from deep purple to brilliant silver as she studied him. Her face was angular yet elegant, with high cheekbones and features that spoke of an alien beauty both captivating and mysterious. "You are Jake Sullivan," she said, her voice carrying a melodic quality that made his name sound like music. "I am Nix Vera, of the Valthari Collective." Jake managed to find his voice. "Nice to meet you, Nix Vera. I guess we're roommates for the next few years." She tilted her head slightly, a gesture that seemed curious rather than dismissive. "Roommates. Yes. I have studied this human concept. We will share living space and presumably develop what your species calls friendship." Her formal way of speaking suggested she had learned human languages from textbooks rather than conversation. Jake set down his travel bag and tried to appear casual, though her presence filled the room with an energy he couldn't quite identify. "Have you been here long?" he asked, noticing that her side of the room was already organized with mathematical precision. 7 solar rotations, Nix Vera replied. "I have established optimal arrangements for our cohabitation. The temperature is set for human comfort, though my species prefers cooler environments. I have also researched human sleep patterns and dietary requirements." Jake smiled despite his nervousness. "That's really thoughtful of you. I hope I can be just as considerate." Something in her expression softened at his words. "Your emotional responses are more complex than the literature suggested. Most fascinating." The first few days passed in careful politeness. Jake attended his engineering courses while Nixera pursued advanced xenobiology and quantum mechanics. She moved through their shared space with fluid grace, every gesture precise and purposeful. Her study habits were intense. She would spend hours motionless, absorbing information from holographic displays that shifted too quickly for human eyes to follow. Despite their different schedules, Jake found himself increasingly aware of her presence, the way she hummed softly while working, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. How her skin seemed to glow faintly in the evening light from their viewport. The careful way she arranged her few possessions, each item placed with deliberate intention. On the 4th night, Jake was awakened by a soft sound from across the room. In the dim emergency lighting, he could see Nix Vera sitting upright in her bed, luminescent skin pulsing gently with what looked like distress signals. "Nix Vera, are you okay?" She turned toward him, and even in the low light he could see tension in her features. "I apologize for disturbing your rest, Jake Sullivan. I am experiencing difficulty with sleep adaptation." "Just Jake is fine," he said, sitting up in his own bed. "What kind of difficulty?" Long pause followed. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, more vulnerable than he had heard before. My species evolved on a world where survival required close contact during rest periods. We share body heat and emotional resonance to maintain stability. Since arriving here, I have been unable to achieve proper rest cycles. Jake felt a surge of sympathy. That sounds really hard. Is there anything I can do to help? Her eyes widened slightly as if his offer surprised her. Human literature suggests your species values individual space during sleep. I would not wish to cause discomfort. You're not asking for anything unreasonable, Jake said gently. You need companionship to sleep better. I'm willing to help. We're roommates, right? We should look out for each other. The gratitude in her expression was unmistakable. Your kindness exceeds what I had hoped for from this cultural exchange. That night, for the first time since arriving at the academy, Nix Vera approached Jake's bed with hesitant steps. Are you certain this is acceptable? I'm sure, he replied, moving over to make room. When she settled beside him, Jake was struck by how warm her skin felt, despite her species' preference for cooler temperatures. She arranged herself carefully, her back against his chest, her head resting in the hollow of his shoulder. Her hair smelled like ozone and something floral he couldn't identify. Thank you, Jake, she whispered, her voice already growing drowsy. As her breathing deepened and her luminescent skin gradually dimmed to a soft glow, Jake found himself marveling at how right this felt. Her presence was calming in a way he hadn't expected, and for the first time since leaving Earth, he felt truly at peace. When morning came, Nix Vera was already up and moving through what appeared to be meditation exercises. Her movements were more fluid than before, her earlier tension replaced by a graceful confidence. Did you rest well? Jake asked, though her improved demeanor already answered his question. Better than I have since leaving Valthera, she replied, and when she smiled, Jake felt something shift in his chest. Your presence provided the emotional stability my nervous system required. I am in your debt. No debt necessary, Jake said. Surprised by how much he had enjoyed their shared sleep, same time tonight, her smile grew brighter. I would be honored. Over the following weeks, what had begun as a simple accommodation transformed into something far deeper. Each night, Nix Vera would cross the small space between their beds. Settling into Jake's arms with increasing familiarity, her initial, formal politeness gradually gave way to genuine warmth. And Jake found himself looking forward to their evening conversations before sleep claimed them. Tell me about your world, Jake said one evening as they lay facing each other in the soft the glow of distant stars through their VIEWPORT. Nix Vera's eyes took on a dreamy quality. Valthera has 3 moons that create tidal pools of liquid crystal across our continents. The forests grow in spirals toward the sky, their leaves singing in harmonies when the wind passes through them. My people build our cities in the canopies, connected by bridges of living wood that respond to our emotions. Her voice carried a longing that made Jake's heart ache. It sounds beautiful. Do you miss it? Every moment, she admitted, her hand finding his in the darkness. But less so when I am here with you. Your species has a concept we lack, the ability to find home in another being rather than a place. Jake intertwined their fingers, marveling at how her skin seemed to pulse with gentle light at his touch. Is that what this is? Home? Instead of answering directly, Nix Vera moved closer, her forehead touching his. Among my people, we have a ritual called the Sarenthal, the joining of emotional frequencies. It creates bonds deeper than friendship, more sacred than simple companionship. What does it involve? Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Touch, she said simply, her hand moving to rest over his heart. Breath, the sharing of one's inner light. Her skin began to glow brighter, and Jake felt a strange tingling sensation where their bodies connected. Would you be willing to attempt this with me? Jake's pulse quickened. I don't know if humans can do whatever you're describing, but I'm willing to try. Nix Vera guided his hand to her chest, placing it over her heart just as hers rested over his. Close your eyes and focus on the rhythm of my heartbeat. Try to match your breathing to mine. Steady pulse beneath his palm. Gradually, His own heartbeat began to synchronize with hers, and their breathing fell into the same rhythm. The tingling sensation intensified, spreading from their point of contact throughout his entire body. "I can feel something," he whispered, amazed. "It's like warmth flowing between us." "That is the beginning of Serenthal," Nyxvera murmured, her voice filled with wonder. "I did not expect a human to be capable of such connection. Your emotional capacity far exceeds what our scholars believed possible." The sensation deepened, and Jake felt as though he could sense her emotions directly. Her contentment, her growing affection, and underneath it all, a profound loneliness that echoed his own. Without conscious thought, he projected his own feelings toward her, his fascination with her world, and the unexpected tenderness that had been growing in his chest. Nyxvera gasped softly, her eyes opening to meet his. In the dim light, her irises swirled with silver and gold patterns he had never seen before. "Jake, what you just shared with me, ... Such openness, such trust. This is beyond what I hoped for. I've never felt anything like that," he admitted, his hand still resting over her heart. "It was like touching souls." "Perhaps we did," she said, and then, with careful deliberation, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was unlike anything Jake had experienced. Sent shivers through his entire body. When they parted, both were breathing heavily. "Was that appropriate?" Nyxvera asked, uncertainty flickering in her expression. "Human courtship rituals are complex, and I do not wish to misinterpret your intentions." Jake cupped her face gently, his thumb tracing the elegant line of her cheekbone. "More than appropriate. Perfect, actually." Relief and joy flooded her features. "Then perhaps we might explore this connection further." Their second kiss was deeper, more confident. Jake marveled at how perfectly she fit against him, her tall frame curving to match his as they held each other. Her skin grew brighter under his touch, and he could feel the emotional bond between them strengthening with each shared breath. As the weeks passed, the relationship blossomed beyond either of their expectations. Exploring the academy together, sharing meals in the multicultural dining halls, and discovering the various recreational facilities designed for interspecies interaction, Nyxvera's formal manner gradually relaxed into something more natural, and Jake found himself falling for not just her otherworldly beauty. Sleep evolved into something more intimate. They would spend hours talking, sharing stories of their respective worlds, and exploring the unique emotional connection that seemed to grow stronger each day. Jake learned that Valtheri could communicate through touch in ways humans couldn't. Imagine, and Nyxvera was amazed by humanity's capacity for verbal and emotional expression. "Your species possesses something we lack," she told him one evening as they lay entwined, her head resting on his chest. "The ability to love without reservation, to give your hearts completely to another being. We bond for survival, for stability, but what you offer me is pure choice. Is that what this is?" Jake asked, his fingers combing through her starlight hair. "Love." She lifted her head to look at him, her eyes serious. "I believe so. I suspect what exists between us transcends the definitions either of our species might use." Their happiness, however, was not destined to remain unchallenged. Word of their unusual relationship had begun to spread through the Academy's social networks. With Suspicion and Concern, Part 3. Love Beyond the Stars, the first sign of trouble came during Jake's Advanced Propulsion Systems class. Professor Hendricks, a stern woman with graying hair and sharp eyes, asked him to remain after the other students had left. "Mr. Sullivan," she began, settling behind her desk with a grave expression, "I've received some concerning reports about your living arrangements." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "Out. What kind of reports?" "Your relationship with the Valtheri exchange student has attracted attention from the Academy administration. Some faculty members are concerned about the potential implications of such a close bond between species." Implications. Jake struggled to keep his voice level. "We're not harming anyone. If anything, our friendship has been beneficial for both of us." Professor Hendricks leaned forward, her expression softening slightly. "I'm not here to judge you, Jake, but you need to understand that interspecies relationships are largely uncharted territory. There are protocols, regulations, and frankly, political considerations that extend far beyond the Academy. Political considerations? The Valtheri Collective has strict codes regarding emotional bonds and reproductive compatibility. Their leadership views your relationship as a potential threat to their species' genetic and cultural integrity. Similarly, some human officials worry about the precedent this might set for future diplomatic relations. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. So our feelings don't matter? What Nixvera and I have found together is real, it's meaningful, and it's helping both of us grow as individuals. I believe you, Professor Hendricks said gently. But belief and institutional policy are two different things. I'm telling you this as a warning. There are forces at work that may try to separate. You too, be prepared. That evening, Jake returned to their dormitory to find Nixvera sitting on her bed, staring at a holographic message display with an expression of deep distress. Her skin had lost much of its usual luminescence, appearing pale and muted. What's wrong? He asked, immediately crossing to her side. She gestured to the hologram, which displayed text in flowing Valthari script. I am to report to the diplomatic vessel that arrived in orbit this morning for immediate consultation regarding my conduct here. Jake felt his world tilting. Conduct? What does that mean? Her voice was hollow, defeated. Such connections with non-Valtheri are considered aberrant behavior requiring correction. Correction. The word sent ice through Jake's veins, perhaps even permanent separation. From Academy studies, she turned to him, and he could see tears glistening in her extraordinary eyes. They believe I have been contaminated by human emotional excess. Jake pulled her into his arms, feeling her trembling against him. We won't let them do that to you. There has to be something we can do. What can we do against the combined authority of two species? Nixvera asked, her voice muffled against his shoulder. You have your future to consider, your career in engineering. I will not allow my choices to destroy your dreams. My dreams don't mean anything without you in them, Jake said fiercely. We'll figure this out together. The next morning brought a formal summons for both of them to appear before a joint human Valthari tribunal. The meeting took place in the Academy's main conference chamber, an imposing room with a curved ceiling that displayed real-time views of the surrounding starfield. On one side of the long table sat Professor Hendricks and two other human officials Jake didn't recognize. Across from them, 3 Valthari delegates had taken their positions, including the imposing figure of Elder Keithan, whose ancient face bore the ritual scarification of his high rank. Jake Sullivan and Nixvera of the 43rd Spiral. Elder Keithan intoned, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. You stand before this tribunal to answer for actions that violate both species protocols regarding interspecies contact. One of the human officials, a woman with steel-gray hair, leaned forward. Mr. Sullivan, you were briefed on appropriate boundaries when you enrolled in the exchange program. Your relationship with the Valthari delegate exceeds those boundaries. Jake felt Nixvera tense beside him, but he forced himself to remain calm. With respect, we haven't violated any actual rules. We've formed a friendship that has been beneficial for both of us. Friendship. Elder Keithan's tone was skeptical. Our monitoring of Nixvera's biometric data indicates a level of emotional and physiological bonding consistent with mate pair attachment. Such bonds are reserved for genetically compatible Valthari partners. And from the human perspective, the gray-haired official added, romantic entanglements with alien species raise questions about psychological stability and judgment that could affect your future clearance levels. Nixvera stood suddenly, her skin beginning to glow with what Jake had learned was a sign of strong emotion. I request permission to speak, Elder Keithan nodded curtly. Honored Elder, esteemed humans, she began, her voice carrying a musical quality that filled the chamber. What Jake and I have discovered together is not a violation of our respective natures, but an expansion of them. Through our bond, I have learned that love need not be limited by species, that emotional growth can come from the most unexpected sources. She turned to face Jake, her eyes blazing with silver fire. Jake has shown me that strength comes not from isolation, but from the courage to open one's heart to another being. He has taught me to laugh, to dream beyond the boundaries of duty, To imagine a future filled with possibility rather than mere obligation. Jake stood as well, taking her hand in full view of the tribunal. Nixvera has taught me that love is a force that transcends biology, culture, even species. We have isn't just attraction or curiosity, it's a genuine partnership that makes both of us better than we were alone. Emotional rhetoric, Elder Keithan said dismissively. The collective has protocols for a reason. Genetic dilution and cultural contamination threaten the purity of our species' development. But what if that's exactly what both our species need? Jake challenged, his voice growing stronger. What if the future isn't about maintaining separation, but about learning from each other? Nixvera and I are proof that such bonds can exist, that they can be beautiful and meaningful and right. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft hum of the station's life support systems. Jake could feel his heart pounding as he waited for their judgment. Finally, Professor Hendricks spoke. The tribunal will reassess to consider your statements. You'll have our decision within the hour. As they waited in an adjacent holding room, Jake and Nixvera sat close together, her head resting on his shoulder. Whatever they decide, she whispered, know that these weeks with you have been the most meaningful of my existence. You have given me something I never thought possible, the knowledge that I am capable of love beyond duty. This isn't over, Jake said firmly. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. When they were called back, Elder Keithan's expression was unreadable. After deliberation, this tribunal has reached a decision. Nixvera, of the 43rd Spiral, will return to Valthera for traditional bonding ceremonies with an approved genetic match. Jake Sullivan, you will complete your studies here, but will be flagged for psychological evaluation before any future diplomatic assignments. Jake felt the room spinning around him. No, you can't do this. However, Professor Hendricks interrupted. A slight smile playing at her lips, there is an alternative option that has been proposed. Elder Keithan-esque's jaw tightened, but he nodded reluctantly. A research expedition to the Kepler frontier requires volunteers for a 5-year mission, studying interspatial phenomena. The isolation and danger make it unsuitable for traditional personnel assignments, but perfect for 2 individuals, whose bond might prove useful in extreme circumstances. Professor Hendricks continued. You would serve as a test case for future interspecies cooperation protocols. Jake and Nixvera exchanged glances, hope blooming in both their hearts. We accept, they said simultaneously. 6 months later, aboard the research vessel Horizon's Edge, Jake and Nixvera stood together in the observation deck, watching the swirling colors of an undiscovered nebula paint the darkness with impossible beauty. Nixvera's head rested against Jake's shoulder, their bond stronger than ever after facing the challenges of deep space together. Do you ever regret choosing this? Jake asked, his arm tightening around her waist. Nixvera turned in, his arms, her eyes reflecting the nebula's ethereal glow. Never. We may be outcasts from our respective societies, but we have found something more precious than acceptance. We have found each other. Their kiss was tender and full of promise, a seal on their commitment to forge a new path among the stars. Around them, the universe spread out in all its infinite mystery, and for the first time, neither felt alone in its vastness. As they held each other close, Jake realized that sometimes the greatest discoveries weren't new worlds or technologies, but the connections that reminded you what it meant to be truly alive. In Nixvera's arms, surrounded by the endless dance of distant suns, he had found his home among the stars. Their love story would become legend among future interspecies couples. Proof that the heart recognizes no boundaries except those we impose upon ourselves. And in the quiet moments before sleep each night, wrapped in each other's arms as they had been from the very beginning, they dreamed of a future where love truly could conquer all.